The Melting Pot. Hosted by Dominic Monkhouse.
Hello and welcome to the Melting Pot podcast. It's Dominic Monkhouse. Today I'm talking to the founder at Dovetail Lab. Very busy lady, CEO and founder of a number of companies. She'll talk about some of that in more detail. She'll even talk about some of her time in corporate finance and her time just after leaving university. She was in Wandsworth Prison delivering teaching programs. Alex, welcome.
I'm Alexandra Eavis. I'm the founder and CEO of two companies because one was clearly not enough. One is a blockchain company. We use distributed ledger technology to increase interoperability of medical record systems and improve patient data sharing. And the other one is a spin-out from a statutory funded special educational needs school where I was a governor. And it's a vocational learning technology which uses NFC technology and mobile devices.
Why have you decided to do two businesses at the same time? That sounds mad.
Yes, it's completely bonkers. So the one that came out of the special needs school was never really intended to be a business. Many years ago when I was working in corporate finance, I felt a bit soulless, so I thought I would try and give something back to humanity, and I volunteered to be a school governor, and I was recruited by a really genuinely outstanding special needs school. I think it's the only 6 times outstanding special school in the UK. And one of the things that I did as a governor was wander around and meet teachers and look at the different resources that they were using to teach. And one of the teachers was teaching life skills and had come up with a really sort of neat little way of teaching kids how to brush their teeth or make their beds or make a cup of tea. And it was little stickers that you tapped with your phone and they played step-by-step videos of how to do certain tasks. It obviously, any of us that have ever used a YouTube video had potential beyond its current use. So I encouraged 2 of the teachers to leave the public sector and try their hand at becoming entrepreneurs, evil capitalist entrepreneurs. And it's turned into a business, and it's been going for a couple of years now, and I've been sort of steering them in the right direction. But they do all the hard work. I am simply at the tiller giving good advice where I can, and sort of probably questionable most of the time. So that's great. But it was a sort of accidental business. And last year I exited another business which was using IoT technology to keep older and disabled adults in their own homes, and was looking at one of the problems we stumbled across there all the time was sort of really, really poor data sharing, even worse sort of between social care and healthcare space, and was looking at sort of different technologies, and blockchain was just becoming all the rage. But actually 99% of the things people do with blockchain you could do cheaper and quicker with other technologies, whereas actually I think what we're doing is one of the handful of things that actually make very good sense with the technology. So it was a clear problem and what seemed like a good solution. So yeah, the NHS very kindly funded us to deliver a product, and we thought we better set up a business to fulfill the contract. So it was one of those nice contract comes first, business comes second scenarios.
You must have put a compelling case to the NHS for them to give you their money.
Yeah, and so they were doing a call around some of the way they sort of sponsor innovation is they do sort of calls, and one of the call was around general practice of the future and how general practice, what technologies we can invest in now sort of revolutionise the way general practice works. So we responded to that. Actually, what we proved in our 6-month study was that putting medical records on a blockchain is a really bad idea. So what we decided after that is actually don't do that because that's not a great idea. But how can we still solve the problem using this technology, and what are the reasons people don't share data now, and how can we let everybody continue to use existing systems, whether that's an electronic health record or a personal health record on their phone or a digital health app, and let data pass between all of those different systems. So kind of creating a virtual shared health record, but do that in a secure and sort of compliant way, so that it ticks all the information governance boxes, and everybody's backsides are duly covered. Actually, the blockchain is very good for that.
So that project continues. Does that mean sometime soon I will be able to share all of the data that I have about myself with my GP? Or
yeah, so the idea is that at the moment your GP is the data controller, so you're just a data subject. So actually your medical history effectively is controlled by the GP. So we're kind of flipping that model on its head, in that actually pushing the power back onto you as the patient and saying, well, you can control that data, you can give explicit consent for that data to be shared, and you can remove that consent as well if you want to, and then the power's back in your hands. And it becomes more than, it sort of goes beyond consent. It's more like a sort of demand or a request of, actually, I want you, GP, to send the data about my feet to my podiatrist, or into my phone where I have a personal health record app and I want to view that data.
Looking into your crystal ball, Mystic Meg, when do you think that becomes a reality?
It's starting to become a reality. Even the NHS is releasing its own app. It's a patient app, which supposedly will happen in September, but or this year. So we'll see if that is delivered, but it will certainly be soon. And that there'll be a sort of a single sign-on, a sort of citizen identity. So a bit like KYC in banking, there'll be the sort of a form of that, so you can, take a selfie and take a photo of your passport, and it knows you are you, and then you can download the data onto your phone. I think we're probably a way off what we've got with it's kind of like the nascent stages of online banking, where you could just look at the data versus what you can do now, when you can pretty much do all your banking online, and all the different apps have sprung up that do various different sort of banking transactions. The same will happen ultimately with health data. Right now we're at the stage of just getting everybody to be able to look at their data. What you can do with it after that is kind of the exciting bit. Yeah, because once you've got a system set up where people can look, then people can share their data with other apps or with other companies. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the big, there's a lot of talk about AI in healthcare at the moment, and one of the big problems we know AI companies have is the only data they can get access to, if they can get access to any, is anonymized data. And actually, anonymized data isn't always that useful. You want to know what the outcome was in 6 years' time or longitudinally. So you want to be able to go back to that person and ask them. And actually, generally, people, certainly when it comes to healthcare, are in favour of sharing their data, but they want to know that it has been shared. So if you can send a notification to somebody and say, we're looking for a cure for cancer, are you happy to share your medical data with us to do that? I think 99.9% of people would be absolutely fine with that. I mean, there'll always be some hardcore privacy believers, but, ultimately the majority of the population agrees to anything in order to get the app that they want to use or the service that they want. I think we'd all contribute something to the greater good if we were given the opportunity to. It's what always irks people is when their data is used without their knowledge.
Yes, or somebody's making money from their data without their knowledge. Yeah,
exactly. Why not monetize it? It also gives research organisations or private companies the opportunity to send you a notification and say, I want to do this with it. Can I pay you a £5 or give you a £10 Amazon voucher? If people want to do that, that's fine, right?
Yeah, it's fascinating. In a former life, I worked for a company that built and sold GP clinical systems. And in the late 90s, when I was there, we envisaged a shared or interoperable clinical patient record, for ambulance personnel being able to look at, the clinical record for the patient, because the patient may or may not be able to tell them what medication they're on or what have you. And back then it was like, how would we do it? So people have been talking about this problem for at least the last 20 years, I suppose, when GP clinical systems, it was just at the point where electronic pathology records were starting to become common. And it was like, well, what else could we do? Now we've got some data transaction interchange going on. What else could we do? But it's fascinating. It's taken this long for it to become a reality, or almost to become a reality.
I mean, I actually think the data sharing outside the formal healthcare system will probably happen before it happens within the NHS. So most patients you talk to just assume that if you get picked up in an ambulance and taken to hospital, that they can see your medical records. But that it's just an assumption. But, largely, on the whole, that just isn't a reality. And there will still be the sort of clinical interoperability problems between incumbent systems, but we're moving towards international standards and international sort of medical coding languages. So we're getting there slowly but surely.
The NFC business that you have, what's the business model there?
So we've had a few pivots. It's fair to say. So we started off, because it spun out of a school. It was a sort of natural first instinct to try and sell to schools, which was difficult. Both schools and then also sort of supported living, assisted living facilities. And that was very much on a focus to support life skills acquisition for people with differently abled people. That was a really hard sell, just because the public sector is just really, budgets are on their knees. And if it didn't save, you couldn't justify that it saved money. It was it's a nice to have, not a need to have. It was really difficult. So actually, we've kind of amazingly got picked by IKEA on its sort of inaugural accelerator program. And lots of the big corporates are doing these sort of accelerators now. And I think they had 1,300 applicants, and they picked 10 to go on a 3-month accelerator program in Älmhult, which, if anybody is Swedish is listening, will say I pronounced it completely wrong, in Sweden, which is in the middle of nowhere in Sweden, but it is where IKEA started, where Ingvar Kamprad was from. And we lived on a campsite with my 2 other founders in a wood cabin without running water for 3 months, going on an IKEA bicycle every day to IKEA. But it was interesting that IKEA sort of singled it out, and actually we explored lots of different use cases. The obvious one was obviously, assembly instructions for flat pack furniture, but actually what we ended up doing is using it for workers at IKEA stores to teach other workers how to do things. So actually what we now do is we license a platform so workers can create learning content and share learning content with other workers. So it's really good in any kind of industry where you learn in the flow of work. So retail, hospitality, food and beverage, manufacturing, where you kind of, e-learning and sort of sitting behind a desk is not appropriate, where you actually kind of want to learn on the shop floor. That is the business model now. Sort of it's nascent, but it's great being a mission-driven company. Investors are confused by it. They don't really get the are you a charity? Are you a social enterprise? Or are you a business? And it's like, well, why can't we be both? Certainly a profit-making entity and an entity that has a social impact. The great thing is it can be used by everybody. Our background, we're very passionate about people with learning disabilities being in the workforce and being employed, and hopefully that helps companies, our tools help companies do that. But actually, it's great for everybody, and the fact that everybody uses the same tool completely helps smash the sort of stigma around disability as well, because we all need, depending on the complexity of the task or when we learnt it, we all need help with how to use a photocopier or how to use a complex piece of machinery, or how to assemble one of those big white bins in IKEA.
Well, and just the idea of, even as an IKEA customer, being able to see the video of how to, without having to try and type that into a phone, or you mentioned food and beverage, and one of the big things which is a real sort of debilitator in that industry is that staff turnover. People who've just learned how to do everything then leave, because on your first day or week, people tell you lots of things and you remember 10% of it.
Yeah, that knowledge transfer and reinforcement is amazing. There's so many industries where your star employee leaves, and all their expertise is just gone with them. You know, big organisations, you know, like an IKEA where you've got 400 stores across the world. It's like the idea that, you know, Bob in the Edinburgh store can teach VJ in the Mumbai store that's just opening is, I think that's kind of powerful as well.
Is it like a wiki? So can anybody upload content and edit content and comment on content and change it and create a workflow around new content?
For our corporate customers, yeah. So the idea is any employee can use it and create content, and then it's sort of sent for vetting to an appropriate manager or learning and development team, or it's different in every different organisation. And then once it's approved, anybody in the organisation can code a sticker and share the learning content. But the neat thing is, because it links the sort of the learning to the location, then it's like you learn the right thing in the right place at the right time.
That sort of democratization of content creation and being specific. The number of times people create something at the center of an organization, and by the time it gets to the edge, people are like, well, that's really helpful, but that's 12 months later and is completely useless. And just being able to do it at the edge is just so vital to it being relevant and timely and, as you say, location specific.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you've got, you know, version control as well. You can change the content, changes the content tag to those stickers wherever they are all over the world. So yeah, I mean, just from a sort of continuity of training point of view, it's a great tool.
You've gone from a big companies to little companies, even if it's multiple little companies. What's your personal journey from sort of large corporate to small businesses?
No, not really large corporate. So I was trying to calculate the other day. I was like, I don't think I've had a job for 15 years. I was trying to remember the last time I had a job. No, I did a stint in corporate finance, but then I kind of set up my own sort of corporate finance little boutique as well. So that was kind of mine as well. I did the, you know, if you're not a socialist in your 20s, you don't have a heart thing. And when I first left university, my first job, I taught life skills, amazingly, at the age of 21 in Wandsworth Prison, to the largest male prison in the country. I was employed by the NHS. What they were thinking, I have no idea, because it was absolutely. I taught relationship skills, because you've clearly got those age 21. I taught anger management, and I taught assertiveness and positive thinking to a bunch of very nice lads who had made what I would call circumstantial criminals, people that I guess made what I think is probably almost a rational decision of if you've got no education and you can't get a job, and the guy on your estate who has the prettiest girlfriend and drives the nice car is the drug dealer. Well, you'd go, and drug dealing seems like the most sensible job out there, right? So I can kind of see how most of them ended up where they were. But yeah, it was interesting. People always say, oh, it must have been really hard. I was like, it was the easiest job in the world. When young guys spend 23 hours a day in their cell, they get 1 hour out and they get to spend it with a 21-year-old girl. Like, it was great. They yes, miss, thank you, miss, please, miss. That was interesting. And then I worked with several charities for a while as well. And then I turned to the dark side and totally flipped and did corporate finance for ages. So I've done a little bit of everything, but I've always wanted to do something good. But if you're still if you're still a socialist in your 40s, you don't have a brain. That's right. So profit and social impact together it is.
But you left the business last year, didn't you? The Alcove, who were, again, profitable business, social impact. Yes,
absolutely. At the beginning of March last year. That was great business. It was having never had a technology business before, it was ambitious doing software and hardware as a service. It was a very steep learning curve, and thank God we had an amazing CTO, because it would have been a much rockier ride. The one thing I've learned is to always employ people cleverer than yourself, and you will do all right. So that's my rule of thumb, and have been helped out by that many times. And that goes on, it's still going on. My co-founder runs that now, but I think it goes from strength to strength.
I remember when we talked about that some time ago, fascinating using sort of machine learning to see when you need an intervention in care of old people.
Yeah,
very good.
Oh, that's very bad language, Dom. We don't call them old people, older adults.
Oh.
Because
okay.
nobody wants to be an old person, and we're all swiftly becoming one. So I think the message is important in that market because ultimately, like, I think, nobody goes out and buys an old person product. Nobody wants to buy a stair lift or a walking stick. It's always kind of, the view for that business was always like, try and make it aspirational. It's like create something that people want to buy for themselves rather than have to buy, that kind of aspiration led, not needs led. But how can we help you do the things that you want to do as you age rather than like the depressing stuff, although obviously that's important as well. But that was always kind of a big driver for us, that we felt all the older adult kind of focused brands were really either sort of like pearly white teeth 50-year-olds made up to, with their hair sort of greyed out to look older, or which was completely unrealistic, or like close-ups of sort of frail hands and people bent over and looking sad, and it's like, oh God, hate all this imagery. Technology is just, I mean, we're just at the bottom of the like hockey stick, aren't we? It's changing every day, and it's quite exciting, like harnessing the power of technology to help the people that need it the most.
As you were talking about making advert aspirational, I realised that I must be being targeted by somebody, because I saw an advert recently that said everybody is now buying walk-in baths. And I realised that is actually trying to use Aspiration to sell a product to older adults that can't climb into a bath. Why it's being aimed at me, I have no idea.
I saw one the other day, which I was like, I thought it was a great idea. It was like, it's just a body dryer. So it's like a giant hair dryer that you just sort of step in, so you don't need to use. I was like, I don't know what the eco credentials are, if that's any better than like using and washing towels, but I quite like the idea of just like never having to use a towel again. But also if then if you're in a wheelchair or you're an older adult, you don't have to, that must be one of the worst things, or the sort of, having to have the fact that, often strangers provide intimate care.
I like that. Or taking it off the towel rail and realising that you should have washed it yesterday because it's a bit smelly.
Yeah. No, you will always have the just steps out of a salon vibe.
So look, when you look back over your career, if you got to do it all again, what would you do differently?
Well, I don't believe in regret, so I wouldn't go down that path.
Or what have you learned recently that you wish you'd known back then?
I think ultimately the older you get, the more confident you get, and the better you are at. I think the less you care about what other people think, so you can be a bit bolder and braver in that. And I think probably, that sort of level of self-belief would be great, rather than all the questioning. Also, just I think sort of like from a fundraising perspective, and then because effectively as a CEO, you end up of a startup these days, you just end up 6 months of every year fundraising, which is quite painful. But the kind of, I guess, knowing how the begging bowl system works and not being intimidated by it, and working out that it's okay to ask for the money, whether that's from customers or from investors, straight off the bat would have been good. And I think there's definitely a formula which is, I think, become better now. There's such a wealth of materials on the internet and really, really good things of how to pitch, of how to do your decks, of of who to talk to, of which groups to go to. But sort of I think that's become so much easier and better these days. And I think, and also just with SEIS and EIS and all the great tax advantages that the government created in the UK, that is just much more viable now to go out and raise money and do what you genuinely love doing. Because I think that's the most important thing. You've just got to, certainly running your own company, you've got to absolutely love going to work every day. Maybe the 8 years or so doing corporate finance, I'd probably go back and certainly shorten that period of time.
And do something
Yeah.
you love doing more.
Yeah, absolutely. That was too long doing that. And now I'm like the oldest person in the office. I was like, damn, how did that happen? If you always employ people younger than yourself as well, you will feel eternally younger. It's great.
Smarter and younger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any books you've read that you think people should read? Books you've given away, or books that changed your life, or books that you've read recently you thought were amazing?
I just read Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, who is the founder of Nike, and it's a great book. Really well told story and really interesting story, and obviously we all know the outcome, but that was a cracking read, and also sort of quite emotionally sensitive for a founder who, let's face it, can sometimes not be the best at sharing the secret sauce. Definitely recommend that one. I tend now to do complete switch off and try and read absolute trash, because it's what I call mind chewing gum. It's a bit like sort of turning on Strictly Come Dancing on a Saturday night, because I spend 99.9% of the time thinking about work, and then it's nice just to go completely brain dead for a while. So that's a terrible admission, but true. It's important to have a work-life balance. I'm not sure that reading trashy novels counts as life, but it is one of them.
What are your tips to keeping balance then? What do you have to do so that life works well?
I think I'm pretty lucky in that I got a fairly an addictive but healthy pursuit hobby, which I took up when I was 30, whereas when I went out of London and got on a horse, which I'd never done, and got completely addicted, and now I own 2 horses and don't live in London anymore. Well, I live in London in the week, and I go home on the weekend to Suffolk, and it's just complete switch off. Find a hobby where you can't use a phone while doing it. I think is a really good tip. Something like, I guess, sailing would be hard, or anything where you've literally got to have a digital detox and got to switch off your phone, because it's really, really difficult to just get away from notification culture now. You're always on, you're always working. So having time when you've just, it's like enforced weekly switch off time is really important.
Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to chat to me this afternoon.
That's all right.
Thank you for listening to the Melting Pot podcast. Please, we're now on iTunes. Give us some feedback, and on Stitcher and SoundCloud. That'd be fantastic. And sign up to the newsletter over on medium.com/foundry-media. You can sign up for the weekly newsletter and read the blog. Till next time. Goodbye.
The Melting Pot was hosted by Dominic Monkhouse, and you can find out more about Dom on LinkedIn. Just search for Dominic Monkhouse or his companies, Foundry Media or Foundry 51.